All right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan.
What's up?
What a news day.
Oh.
What a news dump. Is this a news dump? Is that where we're at on a Wednesday? I mean, the Leafs are opening camp. There's ownership news. Bo Bichette's back. Wild stuff. Don Sweeney down in Boston is, making some comments, and he's not happy with fake news, right? He went on about fake news, I guess, and the Jeremy Swayman situation. What a day it's been. I love it.
Yeah, what a day it's been. And let me just circle back. I should have texted back in the group chain, and I don't want to air out our laundry, but that little message that was sent to the group, I just have a little note for the other players around the NHL who have come to Mitch Marner's rescue for last year. I just hope this year we don't do playoff panels. Forget it. Forget it. Whatever happens, let's all just be happy, and it's a great regular season. And Hayes, you can go on SportsCenter and say, hey, man, they played a good game, but who cares? If I read one more thing about people coming to his rescue or him surviving the criticism, do these guys around the league understand that no one's won around here forever? It's like the most passionate hockey market in the world, and there's been no winning, and there's some frustration. Not by me. I don't care. My job is to describe what happened. I'm just so tired of here. Just forget about doing playoff analysis. Forget it. Just have fun like the Quebec Pee Wee tournament, and we'll that's what we'll do.
Well, I'm doing the positive list tomorrow, right? I'm going to buy into that tomorrow. I'm doing the 5 reasons to believe it'll be different. And, maybe Mitch, he's got the armor because he survived the summer. He found a way to survive.
What does that even mean?
I don't
what are you
believe
talking
that.
about?
I don't know. You know what? I didn't think you were going to bring it up, but
it bothered me. I was in the car and I'm like, I don't have time to call these guys. And it was like drilling into my head. And I'm like, what do you mean surviving the summer? Are we just supposed to say great trying, like good try? Like you guys were awesome, but it didn't work out? I don't know.
There were a couple of players. We're gonna play a number of clips throughout the afternoon. But there were a number of players that I guess you would call it coming to his defense. Zach Bogosian on a podcast, and Zach obviously played with him, knows him well.
Yeah, he said he was a great guy, one of the best guys he's ever played with. Nobody ever questioned that.
No one's ever. That's what is kind of frustrating.
Jesus
no one has
Christ.
ever said anything about Mitch Marner personally because nobody knows Mitch Marner personally, other than his teammates and his family and his friends. And I'm not surprised at all that there are people that are like, this guy's the best guy in the world, and he's an awesome teammate. I've always heard that about. Everyone's heard that about Mitch. Is that he loves being a Leaf and loves being here, and he shows up to work every single day. That's never been in question. No one's questioning his passion to play or his work ethic. That has never come up. It's simply that he's a part of a program, not alone, that doesn't win. And as a result, people react to that stuff, and they react to the way you play. Chris Bassett, this is the other side of it. This is where the Leafs are different, right? Chris Bassett, now, he didn't actually get charged with the earned runs last night, but didn't pitch well. Didn't pitch well last night. All right, let's call that out. George Springer gets picked off on first in the 6th inning. Let's talk about the players. The Jays are begging you to do that. With the Leafs, they're begging you to talk about something else, right? Because people are actually talking about the players with the Leafs, and it's, hey, this is getting a little bit crazy here. What are we doing? Go talk about Shanahan or Tree or talk about Keith Pelly and him arriving. Why are we focused on the players here in Toronto? Do we have the clips? We have the clips.
Yeah,
Let's play the clips to be fair.
It's like, sorry, I know you
wasn't
direct
prepared for that out of the gate.
I know you direct traffic around here, but I couldn't text and drive, and I saw it out of the corner of my eye, and it just went into my skull and marinated in there while I was driving home. I washed my hair, and I came down here, and I'm like, this is bothering me.
Okay, let's hear it. Mitch Marner earlier today.
Those are 2 special guys. Obviously, Bogosian I've known for quite a while. Lived at my house for majority of COVID with our team here, and he's a special human being. It was nice. I got those messages from other people who just sent them to me. Like I've said, I'm really trying to stay off of all the kind of social media markets just to, just stay clear and realize, there's a lot better things probably going on and, put in your mind. So had people send them to me, and it was really special to hear from both those guys. And obviously those 2 guys are, pretty special players and have done a lot in this league. So was cool to hear those messages and, hear their thoughts and their love for me.
Okay. All right. So he's talking about McKinnon and Bogosian.
Yeah.
And here is Mitch, a continuation of that line of questioning on the coverage and I guess some of the criticisms here in Toronto.
I've really tried to keep myself quite far away from reading any comments or anything about myself throughout this past year and even past 2 years. So really try to just stay away from it. Try to just realize that, every summer brings a new responsibility of just trying to get better, quicker, faster, stronger, and be the best that you can be. So I think that's where I've thought of myself. Nothing has changed this summer in that aspect. Just wanted to make sure once summer started, I was going to be the best I could be with working out and training wise. And like I said, I'm very grateful to be with Maple Leaf. I'm thinking a lot of guys are very grateful to be with Maple Leaf. It's an unbelievable team to play for, first class. The fan base is unbelievable. So, we're all very fortunate and lucky to have it.
Okay. Well, there you go. All right. I mean, seems pretty composed up there, and didn't want to talk about his contract, which he's not alone. Matthews has done that before. Rielly, like that's generally the Maple Leaf PR play is go up there and just diffuse it and say I'm not getting into it. It's not going to stop people from asking or wondering or trying to report on it. But listen, I'm curious to see what Mitch does when he gets on the ice. You guys can speak to it as athletes. Like dealing with the media is not always easy when you're not trained for it, when you don't know what's coming. Dealing with fans and social media and all that kind of stuff. The way you get people to pump your tires and basically demand this team keeps you long term is to go out there and perform, but ultimately win. That's what has to happen.
That was another word that was missing out of that equation, and yet another opportunity to just say, you know what? What needs to happen around here for everybody to be happy is winning, and that's the one thing we haven't done. We've all been drafted. We've all been treated like gods. We've all been paid like gods. Everybody loves being a Maple Leaf, and there's one thing that's not in the equation, and it's winning, and that's what we attempt to do this year, and that's what we are going to do, and that's what we're going to do. That's all you got to say. Instead of saying, I love the messages, guys sticking up. What the hell are you talking about? What are you talking about?
I think he was just answering a question. Like somebody must have actually.
I know, Jamie, but it's nonsense. This isn't peewee hockey or junior hockey where it's like, yeah, thanks for this. What are you talking about? You guys all get paid like gods, and you lose in the first. You always just all you do is lose. It's all. I don't know. It's outrageous, man. It's outrageous.
I shouldn't have put that tweet into the group text. This is all my fault. I apologize. I just thought maybe the tweet was misworded. That's what it is. Because
they just act like petulant kids, and everyone's after them, out to get them. It's like no one is out to get you. But we'd like to see you bust your ass in the playoffs, and if you're going to lose a series, like go down swinging, maybe make a deep run. I've said it a million times. That's why that collection of players was paid the money, not for individual stuff, for wins, and they haven't got it done. But that would solve everything. Nobody's out to get you. Like, I need to reinforce that. No one is out to get you. No one dislikes you. You just said everyone likes you. Yeah. All the guys like you. That's great. We're not talking about that.
I think, you know what, though? I think he handled that question well. I was waiting for a different answer, but I think he answered the question going, hey, you know what? I want to be faster. I want to be stronger. I want to have a good season. Like, I didn't sense that he was playing victim there. That's the only thing that I would say.
That's standard operating procedures in the National Hockey League. Every guy wants to get bigger, stronger, faster, better in the summer.
Yeah. Well, then he did his media, and you move on. Like, go back to what Hayes said.
I guess.
Hayes, I'm curious to see what this guy is going to do in a free agent season here, and where he's playing for a contract. Like, I think he's going to hit the ground running. I've been on record saying this, 5-6 times already.
Jamie, I guess why I'm frustrated is I've never personally attacked these guys, and I find it frustrating is I got to go on SportsCenter after yet another crushing loss or a choke job, or it's been going on for 7 or 8 years. And for anyone to take that as like a personal attack or hard on them or attacking them, I think that's just absolutely insane. I think that's insane because that's just me, what I have to do for my job. Jeff, what happened there? They blew it. They lost. Again, I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just describing what's gone on. That's all I do for a living. I describe what goes on. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I don't think this was directed at you. Like he was. That's the only.
No,
thing
I
that
get
I
it
would
wasn't
say.
directed at me, but I don't think anyone would personally attack them and say.
I mean, here, listen. You do have to separate. One thing I will say, I'm not sure I'm buying, is the idea that he had the ability to stay off social media.
That's
because
also nonsense.
I don't think it's possible. I will say this as someone who is older, much older than Mitch Marner. I don't. I have young kids. I have a job. I have things going on in my life, and I am way too consumed with social media. He is on a completely different level because he has such a massive following, and I just think it's impossible to completely avoid that. So I do think you have to separate the two. I think shows like this and other shows and reporters and analysts and all that kind of stuff, they're going to report and they're going to say and do what they're going to do. We have standards on this show where we're not going to make it personal. We're not talking about someone's personal life. We're not going to, that's something that we're not going to do, but you can't control that on social media. So I wonder if he's coming at it from, is he getting stopped on the street? Like
I cannot control what people that live in their parents' basement do.
No, exactly.
I cannot control that.
But it's not always people in their parents' basement, dude. Like that's the way we label it. Sometimes you look at guys, some guys will write and you'll look at him and be like, this guy's a father of four.
And he's a school teacher. And he's a grown-ass man. Yeah, he's
exactly.
a lawyer. He's an accountant. The guy
he's
the head of a church. And he's like having language and stuff.
So that's
any
a
attachment
story.
of that, to me, is absolutely insane.
Exactly. But again, if that is not, I don't believe, where Bogosian and McKinnon were going, where it was more like, wow, he's the best and he's the scapegoat and he's the one that's under attack. And listen, there is no doubting Mitch Marner has been more in the spotlight than anyone else on the team. There's no questioning that. And we can own some of that responsibility as well, because we have talked a lot about Mitch and the way that he's played. And let's face it, the contract hangs over it. That's why I think it would have been in his best interest to show up and say, give me what you got. I'll answer what I can answer, and then I'm going to move on. I would, again, it's easy for me to say, but I would not have suggested that he steps up there and goes, not talking about it, not doing it, moving on. Get out in front of it. Because that has been hanging over his legacy here since he went through the last contract negotiation. That is just a straight fact for a lot of Leaf fans. There are a number of Leaf fans that hold the last one against them and hold the cap hit against them. And I don't know how this one's going to be handled. Because the truth is, the last time the team was 100% committed. 100%, and we're going to do whatever they could to sign him. And in the end, they capitulated, and they gave him just an unbelievable deal that wasn't even 8 years, right?
Right.
This time, I don't know what the team's going to do, and that's what makes this one different. Because Brad Treliving, to my knowledge, at no point on the record has said, it is my top priority to get this done. He has not said that. He said that about Matthews. He said that about Willie. Yeah. He has not said that about Mitch. So that makes it different. So again, in a way, if Marner is feeling like, okay, why am I getting talked about why is there such an obsession with my deal? Go talk to your GM. Go talk to Shanahan. Because they're the one, presuming he's being honest and he wants to stay here and he wants to be a Leaf for life, and by all accounts, that's the truth. And I think that would be an incredible story for a local guy to be the man here, to rack up a bunch of awards and to finally win. Ultimately, win. If he can complete that story, it's an incredible story, and I guarantee you his legacy here will be nothing but positive if he does that. 100% positive, and that's what all these guys should be thinking. And I think that's what you're pointing to, O. Everything else is irrelevant. If you get the job done and win, people are going to treat you in a way that I don't know if any athlete in the history of the city ever has been treated, including Kawhi and everyone else that's won in the last 30 or 40 years. Joe Carter, everything.
Jamie references that Nathan McKinnon comment where it was the end of a season. He's like, I've been here 9 years, man, and I haven't won squat. And he seemed genuinely pissed off about it.
Yeah.
And then he went out and did something about it. But you could tell that the winning part was important to him, and it pissed him off that hadn't been happening. Well, I don't know. It's just it's never a part of the equation.
That's why let's play this Morgan Rielly clip, because I have such an appreciation for this. Even though he kind of hedged his bet a little bit, there's an element of hedging here. Here's what Morgan Rielly had to say about the expectations this season.
Well, I think to a degree, your goal is always to win a Stanley Cup, and anything else is a failure. I think that's how our group feels. But, right now you got to stay a bit more focused on the short term. We want to get training camp going. We want to start competing with one another. And as we go, our goal will always be to win a Stanley Cup. And anything short of that will be a failure.
All right. That's more than anyone else has been willing to say, for the most part, with this team.
Dude, that's what
I like that.
We love Mo. He's a friend of the show.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's every player in the league. That's
I
on
understand
an NHL
that
team says that.
But here, it generally, for some reason, there's been a fear to go there, and I kind of like that. Feel like that is something that can also change here. Just put it on the line, cup or bust. And if you bust, so what? It's not. No one's going to hold you. You don't have your contract
you don't have
rescinded.
To retire.
Yeah, exactly. Might as well attack the goal. Like just acknowledge it, because that is what people in Toronto want to actually see and hear. That's refreshing. That's what I'd like to see and hear.
But you guys know Morgan Rielly's a leader. He's a guy who just kind of shoots from the hip, and he's well respected throughout the league. And, I go back to it. I didn't have a problem with Mitch's comments. He was answering a question, and I thought he answered it the way he wanted to. And he's allowed to do that. When it comes to Morgan, I think Morgan just laid it out there. It's like, hey, we want to win a Stanley Cup. And I know, you were probably like that when you played. We never said the words. You never said Stanley Cup. It's kind of against the stupid code. You're like, yeah, you don't say Stanley Cup. We want to have the big prize at the end of the year. You always say these things. Like, guys are hesitant. Nowadays, this is the world of the 10-second soundbite. How many times did we talk about Ottawa's manager there? I'm drawing a blank.
Pierre Dorian.
Sorry, Pierre. Yep. Love the guy. But Pierre
is over.
Rebuild's over. That's it. And that was a soundbite forever, right? We're done. It happens. You put yourself out there. Last year, McDavid had the captain's skate 2 weeks early. Everyone's saying cup or bust in Edmonton. They made it close, but they didn't win. But, they didn't have to blow the team up because they fell short. Everyone saw what the focus was. I would like to see a focused Toronto Maple Leafs group. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing, what they bring. And Hayes, you guys brought it up yesterday. What are they bringing different? That's what I would like to see, because we know what they're capable of. We see it all the time. We see it in regular season. It's goals, it's highlight reel plays, it's wins, all of that. What are you bringing different this year? I would like that answered, and maybe that could be a flat-out question to one of the players this year.
And listen, if that was the mantra, we're not talking about anything personal, we're just talking about the team, then I could understand that. But Tavares stepped up and goes, I want to be here forever. And he was talking about his contract, right? So it wasn't it'd be one thing if it was consistent. Guys, let's all go into this together and say we're not talking about our personal things. We're not talking about our contracts. We're not talking about personal awards. Austin, don't talk about how many goals you think you're going to score. Let's just say team, cup. We're in this. Okay. I don't know if there's any validity to that. I don't know if that even works.
Probably wouldn't even be allowed to.
And realistically, it's probably completely unnecessary and silly to do that. But that was not the case because, again, John Tavares stepped up and was like, yeah, what do you got? Yeah, I'd like to be here forever. Yeah. So he was willing to talk about it. He's dealt with more, I would say, in the offseason than anyone else because of the captaincy transition.
Yeah.
If there's one player on this team that has dealt with more of a change, so to speak, it would be Tavares.
Yeah.
His identity changed within the locker room, within the market, within the fan base, because he was the captain for 5 years and he's no longer the captain.
I know, but people need to understand that just because his name's John Tavares and he was the captain of the Maple Leafs, you don't call your shot. And there's lots of players in the league that were like, they say to their dad, they say to their wife, I'd like to stay here forever. And they get a call in the summer and says, we're moving on from you. Thank you for your time here. That happens a lot. And just because your name's John Tavares and you're a Toronto kid and you wore the C, it doesn't mean you just get whatever you want. That's just not the way it happens.
Well,
you might. You might, but there's a bunch of players that love markets and love staying there, and they get a call saying you've been traded or we're moving on, we're going in a different direction. That's the nature of pro sports.
100%. Nature of pro sports, and it will eventually apply to all of these guys. Even Austin Matthews, the day will come where they're going to say, I don't know, man, where are we at? But with that in mind, here's what Brendan Shanahan, who spoke today, had to say about, last time we heard from him was at the end of last season, and he said everything's on the table. And there's been change here undoubtedly, but, the core 4, core 5, if you want to include Rielly in that, they have returned. He was asked about the decision to ultimately come back with that same core. Here's what he had to say.
The question we asked ourselves after every decision, whether it was a coaching staff, defense, goaltending, forwards, whatever it is, the question you have to ask, and we did, is does this make us better? So as you evaluate your options and as you evaluate all those different areas where you can make improvements, and as Brad said, we feel that we have made several key improvements, but the work begins tomorrow. We felt that this, the answer at the end of those questions for each of those individual players was we're a better team with them on our team this year.
All right. I mean, he does say this year in particular, but that was the evaluation, that change was going to make them worse. Change would make them different. Change would make them worse. So,
well, you could argue that. I mean, it depends on. It's such a loaded comment.
Yeah.
Because if you change somebody out, well, somebody's coming back in. The argument is who's coming back in, who's leaving. So that's
right.
It's a loaded comment, loaded question.
Right, but it is. But it also feels like a conversation about a whiteboard, as opposed to actually living it. You know what I mean? It's like there's the difference between the professor who's teaching it and then the one that's actually out there executing it. And that's what I question about this analysis is I get it. On paper, you look and say, this works, that guy filters in, this is a good piece. But we've seen it in action, and it's not good enough, right? Like it hasn't been able to break through.
Or maybe what he was talking about is they talked about the player X on the team leaving for player Z on another team, and does that make us better? Because that would be the only option of moving that policy. I don't know.
I get it.
I don't understand what the comment would mean.
And again, I like on the whiteboard, in July, I don't like the way this looks compared to the way that looked. But in April, how does it play?
Right.
Like that's where the frustration has been, I think, for myself and a number of people in the fan base. It's like no one questions the individual talents of all of these guys. That's never been under debate, and nor should it be. But the collective results are what they are as well. Like those are just facts. Like there's nothing you can say. Can't spin it as if they have won something. Right. And yet on the whiteboard, it made sense to bring it all back. So, and it's more complicated than that. I understand it because contracts, no trades, who knows what was available, what was out there. We don't have that information. So you can't really give a fully vested evaluation of whatever the options were because we don't have them and we're never going to get them. They're not going to release that kind of stuff. Right. But I don't know. It's an interesting day one. It's an interesting day one at camp. The Leafs are back. Back on the ice tomorrow and back playing this weekend.
You know what? We got lots to talk about now, but it's just I'm more excited about what are we going to see out of this team. How is Matthews going to lead? Is it going to be any different? Is it, Joseph Wall? There's storylines here, but right now, front and center is the lip service that was given out on day one. And whether you believe it, whether you like it, whether, there was things like I didn't think Shanahan or Brendan, I didn't think the way he answered it, he didn't have an answer as to what's going to be different, all of that. He shined it up and said, this is what we look at. But bottom line is they put that team together. They've got to go out and perform on the ice.
Yeah.
So that's really what it is.
Sure. And they've made moves. I mean, there's no disputing that. They got a new coach and, I think their defense has been upgraded. I think Brad Treliving used the term, was it internal improvement or internal growth, which is scaring some people. That's kind of an Atkins move.
Blue Jays line.
That's a Rogers play. I know the news this morning, but we can't have that kind of stuff blending in. Right? We got to stop that. We can't have internal improvement applying on both sides. Before you know it, Mark Shapiro's going to be running the Leafs.
No,
I do think it's somewhat applicable. Like we talked about a couple of them yesterday. McMahon, Nyes, like you get those guys getting that kind of plateau year or whatever they call it. Like there's internal improvement that's difference maker type stuff.
100%.
Yeah, I'm being facetious a little bit, but you know what I mean.
The phrase scared you.
It just Ross laid it on pretty thick, the internal improvement, and I just let's keep them separated. Right?
Yeah.
Let's keep the Jays over there doing their thing and the Leafs doing their thing.
Well, speaking of the Jays, I watched that. Did that game go on for 8 hours?
It was one of the longest games of the year. I mean, there were so many hits. The score was it 13-8. It was 7-7, I think, in the fifth inning. Davis Schneider's on fire. I got to give credit to him. I mean, he hit another home run last night, and his bat's really come alive. And Bo had a couple of hits, and Bo looked comfortable to me.
Yeah, he did. He did look comfortable.
He looked like himself out there. And again, I don't know what this is going to mean long term. We discussed it a lot yesterday, but they got 11 more games. They're going to play it out. Bo's going to play it out, reset, internal improvements. We'll figure out what they have next year. Take it from there.
Their pitching, it was like dinger after dinger.
And their bullpen, the Jays' bullpen is so awful. Like, again, Bassett got hit. He went, I think he went 3 2/3.
Whenever Schneider comes out of the dugout, I change the channel.
Yeah, that bullpen is horrendous. And the Rangers aren't any better. I mean, the Texas, they win the World Series, and then they completely fell off. But it was actually a very entertaining game because of the amount of action. But it did go on a long, long time. All right, Darren Dreger's coming up on day one of camp, but also his take on the news today, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, Bell selling their stocks or their shares of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment to Rogers. What does it mean, I guess, for the Leafs, the ownership, where it goes from here? Pretty significant news this morning. Ray Ferraro's coming up. Ray will join us today. We got Ray coming up. We got Jerry's coming up. We got Steve Phillips on Bo's return last night. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. Ray Ferraro coming up in a half an hour. Jerry's percentages in an hour. News this morning that Bell is selling their stake in Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment to Rogers. Pretty significant bombshell, because now you got a scenario where Rogers owns the Blue Jays, owns the Rogers Center, and now they're effectively going to own and be, the ones in charge of everything Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. So Leafs, Raptors, Marlies, Argos, TFC, Scotiabank Arena, BMO Field. It's pretty incredible that it's effectively a monopoly over all of the sports in the largest city in the country and one of the largest sports markets on earth. And
they got it all.
They got it all, and it kind of sets up with, Edward Rogers, who's at the top, and I know it's a publicly traded company, but is kind of taking steps towards being the most powerful sports figure this country's ever seen. And I don't think there's anyone that's even close. And yet, he's not someone that I think the average Torontonian could pick out of a crowd. Like, he's not someone that speaks publicly. I never see him. You never hear from him. So I don't really know what to make of that. Like, I don't know how fans are going to react to this, because what's going to happen is, well, look with the Blue Jays, and apply it to everything else. But what I would say is with the Jays, payroll has not been an issue. They have spent money. They just upgraded the Rogers Center. They pumped a lot of money into that. And I guarantee you, whoever owns the Maple Leafs, Rogers, Bell, Tannenbaum, another party, they are going to spend to the cap. Money is not going to be an issue. Right. But I think if you're a fan, I don't know how much this is going to change, but it is a pretty shocking amount of power and control on basically everything in Toronto sports.
But don't you think the one thing I thought about is a lot of times if you're an organization, you have a board, a lot of times there's differing opinions on the board.
Well, Noodles, that's what everyone said over the years, everyone said, how can you even win with two different people that have different ideas? So that's out the window.
But what I'm saying is, in Ottawa for years, we knew it was, Eugene Melnick. In Edmonton, it's Cates. In Toronto, say, hey, they got to answer to the board. Channy's got to talk up to the board. The board makes it. Now, if it's one guy or one guy's show, If he decides to be a unique person and go, I don't like this, I don't like that, make change, that's a little different.
And that's
correct?
what's coming up today. There were a lot of reports during the Masai Ujiri negotiation that, there was one person in particular that wasn't keen on giving him that deal. And that person in particular is now basically the most powerful person in the building. Here's Darren Dreger, a TSN Hockey Insider. I guess from a Leaf perspective, or maybe from a league perspective, Dregs, I don't know if you have any insight on that or what you can tell us about it, but how the league might react to something as significant as the news today that, Rogers is basically buying up Bell's stock, and Rogers is going to be the one-man show when it comes to Maple Leaf sports and entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any reason to believe that the NHL Board of Governors won't support this. As long as, and there would be owners in that group, perhaps the executive board, and there's a couple of Canadian owners involved there, and Mark Chipman among them, and Jeff Molson with the Montreal Canadiens are probably going to ask, okay, well, the national rights are coming up in 2 years. What does that mean? What's your intel now on Bell and how interested Bell/TSN is going to be at the possibility of trying to engage there? And if the answer is, and I believe it will be, there's interest, then I don't think ownership of the National Hockey League is going to be too concerned because, Rogers has been a good owner. Bell has been a terrific owner. They've worked well in partnership. So the one thing that we don't know is how often you see ownership transfer in the NHL. We see it all the time at Board of Governors meetings, but it's small stuff, right? Like it's minority owners or owners divesting for a certain family reason or what have you. Not to the tune of $4.7 billion, where one entity is selling off to the other, in this case, Bell to Rogers. So it does require, from an NHL perspective, board approval, and that would be the same in basketball as well.
Yeah, it's pretty monster news, man. And I guess if you're the Leafs here, let's focus on them and their scenario. Like, does this change? Would you assume this changes anything day to day? Like, does this affect anything when it comes to, I guess, Pelly into Shanahan, into Tree Living, into Berube, into the players?
Nothing. Zero. And it shouldn't unless, something unforeseen takes place in the months ahead. And I wouldn't predict that. I'll tell you how tight this was, though, guys. I think we all more or less woke up to the news this morning. There was an initial tweet, and then clearly it was confirmed by both sides, Rogers and Bell. But the top of the food chain, not talking Bell and Rogers top of food chain, but I would hazard to guess that like Shanahan wouldn't have known about this before yesterday. I'm not sure Keith Pelly knew about this before yesterday, right? So that's the high level that this deal was navigated through. And I can appreciate and understand it. But then I look at it from Bell's perspective here. And I can see the benefit of doing it. And to give you guys, if you're not aware, a bit of a history lesson here. I don't know how many years back. You probably have it in front of you, Brian, when Bell and Rogers decided they were going to partner up to buy MLSE. Mm-hmm. I know this is accurate. Rogers at that time was positioned to buy it all. And I think the powers at Bell said, geez, don't know if that's wise. Maybe we should get involved in this. And I think there were some who would have preferred Bell buy it all. Instead, they worked out this partnership. And I think for the most part, it's worked out well. The regional rights are there. The Toronto Maple Leafs have done well. The basketball forum is there. The other products and properties under the MLSE flag have done well. But then again, now you bring it back into our business world, and it's hard to argue from our perspective, especially with essentially a 20-year content agreement. Now, there are going to have to be rights that are renegotiated regionally and all of that through this process. But I don't know, man. $4.7 billion from
a lot of money.
A business. That's a ton of dough. And I'm here to tell you that
we all get raises, Darren.
Well,
thank you for saying that. All right, we'll let you go. Appreciate it, Dregs.
Some of us may have recently got one, but it wouldn't be me and maybe no one on this call. But we're not going to mention names.
Okay.
But what I would say is, again, automatically I think the sports community, the sports fan out there is going, okay, well, what does this mean, if anything, moving forward? And then you get a little bit more personal. What does it mean potentially to us? And it shouldn't mean a whole lot. And I think that our company is as well positioned to challenge for a part or the national rights at the NHL level as well as they've been. And that's 2 years away. So, corporately, I think it's a good deal. And was it shocking? Of course it was.
Yeah, there you go. All right, we're not going anywhere. All right, we're just going to keep plugging along here. Good. I love it. Yeah. I love it. With Darren Dreger, a TSN Hockey Insider. Let's apply that line of, I guess, questioning to a couple of players who spoke down at Scotiabank today, where Mitch Marner's approach was not talking contract, don't ask me. John Tavares' approach was, ask me, I'm happy to tell you, I'm dying to stay here the rest of my career. What do you make of those two approaches?
Yeah, I mean, upfront and honest, not at all surprised the position of Tavares. And, there are some out there who think that, he wasn't a big fan of the transition, didn't like the timing of it. But I've talked to those. I haven't, in fair disclosure here, full disclosure, I've not talked to John about this directly. But those close to him, right when it was announced officially that Austin Matthews was getting the C, we're quick to, say, look, Leafs brass did a good job, and that's Brad Treliving, of getting to John early and say, hey, what do you think about the transition of this? And he was on board. But when John signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs and left the New York Islanders, he did that, left money on the table, as we've all talked about time and time again, because he wanted to come home. And nothing has changed for him. He wants to play the rest of his career for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Is that going to work out? I guess we'll have to see how it plays out. But I do think that the Maple Leafs have an appetite to keep him because he's a good dude and he's a heck of a hockey player. And there's no reason to think he's not going to continue to be that. Now you shift over to Mitch Marner. And, I mean, what he did today was rehearsed, but I can't blame him for that. He wanted to say it in the way that he needed to say it. And that was, look, I understand why you're asking the question, but for me, my focus has to be on training camp, the preseason, and a good start for myself and for the team, most importantly, the team. And if you don't say those things going into camp, then you're going to answer it, every time the microphones are up and the cameras are rolling in every city until there is an extension or there's a different direction. That's not going to change a whole lot, but I can understand why Marner took that approach.
Dregs, Hayes has created a world-famous list that he does weekly now, and I don't know how it ended up, because I remember talking on the show when we first got back on. It was you that had the hot seat list, was it not, for years, and then you hated doing that? Was it?
Well, hold on, just point of order here. I was the puppet, and Steve Dryden was the puppeteer. So, yeah, I create.
The hot seat, it was called.
It was a hot seat. Coaches' hot seat, players' hot seat. Everybody had a hot seat at a certain point on TSN.
So anyways, Hayes' list, we believe, tomorrow is going to be 5 things to be optimistic about the Toronto Maple Leafs, or something like to that effect. Brian, correct?
Yeah, why it will be different this year.
Why it'll be different
why
this year.
Why it's going to break loose.
I like it.
Yeah, positive guy.
Give us one in your mind of what you believe could be different for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year.
I think their defense is going to be better. I do. And maybe I can extend that to goaltending. The addition of Stolarz was a real nice add. I mean, there's no long-term kind of, relationships that Brad Treliving brought in defensively, other than what we can see in the contracts. But the men that he brought in are definitely going to make the team better. I don't think there's any doubt of that. So I would say defensively and hopefully in goal, if you're a Leafs fan, there should be some stability there, and I'm not sure we've had that for a while.
I think, guys, to sum it up, what has to happen for positivity and playoff success, I don't think any time that it's all come together for them. Like, all of their good players playing well, power play, goaltending, defending. They've never put it all together, and that's the one thing, Dregs, I would say has to happen, because it hasn't. Like if you look at the teams that have won recently, whether it be Tampa, Colorado, Goaltending, best players showed up, special teams, all of that stuff has come together, and it really hasn't happened for the Leafs, and that needs to happen.
100% agree with that. And in a small part, you guys probably talked about this, going back to Matthews being given the captaincy. A part of that was to say, okay, Austin, it's your team. And the responsibility you now have, aside from the heavy load of being a captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, on the ice, off the ice, around the community, around the world, all of that is obvious. We now expect you to be able to shepherd this team to a place in the playoffs that it hasn't been. This group now belongs to you. And we're talking about the nucleus here, right? The guys that are clearly going to have to drive the bus. And if those guys are all in and they deliver to their capability and the other aspects of what we just talked about, including goaltending and defense, fall into place, they're going to have to for Toronto to be as good as the expectation is. But there's potential in all of that. But a big part of giving Austin Matthews the C was because it's time for him to lead this organization to a much deeper place in the postseason.
Darren, what's old Donnie Sweeney spitting about down in Boston? What's going on down there? Are they going to have a goalie by December, or what the hell's up with that?
Yeah, what the hell did he say? Spit on something, chicklets or whatever. So, I mean, I don't understand why. Don Sweeney's a respectful guy.
I like Don.
Anytime I have a connection, and I've had recent exchanges via text with Don, he's always very professional and never crosses the line. At least, and that's my experience with Sweeney, face to face at varying events. So the fact that, he clearly had something to get off his chest and did with Spit and Chicklets and the group there was a little bit surprising to me. I mean, he's trying to steer the narrative and make sure that honestly, fellas, that's why every time I've talked about the Jeremy Swayman situation, where it's at to this point, I've been really cautious because some of the numbers and the gap in the numbers and all of that I've read just don't make sense. And just because somebody says it, an insider or somebody on Spit and Chicklets, doesn't necessarily mean it's true. You do have to have both sides in that negotiation. So I think that's where the level of frustration came from. But that soundbite from Don Sweeney is going to fuel Biz and the group for days, if not months to come.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Sweeney looks and sounds frustrated, but he's in control of the negotiation as well. I mean, he could have gotten it done by now. It hasn't happened. And I have no problem with any GM, any coach, player, whatever, fighting back. If something's inaccurate, then you have to stand your ground. Like, fight back.
Wouldn't you be frustrated, Hazy? It's like you said, Swayman, okay, you're our guy now. And then Swayman was like, oh, okay, I'm the guy. You're going to pay me now, too. And he feels like I would feel a little.
Maybe you should have figured that out before you sent Allmark packing. I mean, that might have been something to figure out, but they didn't. All right, Dregs, we'll leave it there. We'll do it again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, boys. Have a good one.
Darren Dreger, a TSN Hockey Insider. And like even in the clip, Sweeney said, there's a difference between opinion and fact. And I didn't hear Biz. I didn't hear the clip. So I don't even know what exactly he was referencing.
It was something about that the two camps hadn't talked.
Hadn't spoken like 3 weeks or something.
And he was like, that's completely false. He was pissed about that. I think that's what he was going after because it made him look like that they were just icing Swayman out. And that wasn't the case. It sounds like. Anyways.
Right. And he's if that's the truth, then he's entitled to set the record straight.
Yeah, correct.
And he should. But I didn't think it was so over the top. Like that it was like he was frothing at the mouth or anything. I think he was just kind of pushing back because he understands people are on him in Boston. They're like, what are you going to do without a goalie? You don't have a goalie. You're toast, man.
By the way, that act of not picking up the phone for 3 weeks, that does happen.
Yes.
That is not something that's completely out of the question. Donnie says he didn't do it. I'll take him at his word for it. But that is like not outrageous.
Well,
I've heard a bunch of stories where it's like
both ways. Both ways where the agent's like, yeah, I'll get back to you, and then just doesn't, or basically gives you a thumbs up emoji, and that's it. I mean, that's negotiations. It goes both ways. But the rubber's hitting the road here because they're in camp. All right, Ray Ferraro coming up. Jerry's percentages coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Ray Ferraro coming up. Jay's back in action tonight. Steve Phillips will join us later in the afternoon on what he saw to Bo Bichette, among other things, including his take on, I guess, the way the Blue Jays have been operated for years, because now that Rogers is going to own a majority stake in basically every team, a lot of people are wondering how this is going to play out. What is it going to mean for the Leafs? What will it mean for the Raptors? And
right.
What does it mean for the Jays? What does it mean for ticket prices? What does it mean for concerts? Because it's not only about the teams, it's about the buildings and the venues.
Absolutely.
Like if you just have control over all of it, consumers are wondering, how does this work? A lot of people have already been priced out.
Yeah, inside the company where maybe at one time somebody with one company said, guy probably makes too much. No, it's fine. And head shake, okay, that's fine. And how that person that didn't like it, who knows what they think of it? You brought up Masai.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be interesting stuff.
Well, and like Tannenbaum is still owns 20% stake in Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, but I think everyone is assuming that's going to come to an end soon, right? That it has been reported on that I believe there's a clause that kicks in 2026 that would allow Rogers to buy him out, and that's more than likely going to happen if he doesn't get out before that. And that's going to be the question. Are they going to own 100% of the Jays, Leafs, Raptors, 100%? Like, I would assume at some point they'd probably bring in some other private investors and there'll be minority owners and all that kind of stuff. But
for sure,
it's a lot of money. It's a lot of power. And it's, the teams are hugely popular and profitable, and they've got fans, and they've got fans that want to know what's going to happen here. Jays aren't in a good spot. Raptors aren't in a good spot. Leafs are in a good spot, but the playoffs, that's lingering. What are they going to do? What's going to happen in the future? More on that as we move forward. Hour 2 coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.